At my own birthday party, the night I planned to share the biggest news of my life, my boyfriend handed me a beautifully wrapped gift box. Inside was a single note that read, "I'm leaving you. You're nothing. I deserve more." Then he laughed and walked out. Some people in the room actually laughed with him, assuming it was a twisted joke. But it wasn't. And as everyone turned to me, waiting for a reaction, I just smiled. Because what he didn't know was what I'm capable of. Justin and I had been together a little over 3 years. At first, he was everything I thought I needed. Charming, attentive, the type to actually listen when you spoke. Within a year, we moved into a tiny apartment we could barely afford. The timing wasn't ideal, but love makes you bold like that. We shared the same dreams. A home, travel, maybe children one day. But slowly, I started noticing things. Justin cared a little too much about appearances. Instagram perfect photos, the right car, the right crowd. I brushed it off, chalked it up to ambition. But I should have looked closer. A few months ago, I started feeling off, constantly tired, nauseous. A test confirmed what I hadn't expected. I was pregnant. I sat on the bathroom floor, staring at 2 pink lines, completely overwhelmed. My best friend Barbara was the first person I told. She showed up with wine for girls' night, and the moment I passed on the drink, she knew. Her support helped me gather my thoughts. As for Justin, I wanted to tell him in a way that felt meaningful. My birthday was coming up. It felt like perfect timing. Our friends would be there, and I thought sharing the news with the people I loved would make it even more special. But the weeks leading up to it were off. I was quietly battling what they call morning sickness, which is really all-day misery, and Justin seemed completely unaware. He was always on his phone, getting home late, distant. I figured work stress. Nothing more. The party was small. Our closest friends, good food, laughter. I had planned to make my announcement right after we cut the cake. Around 9 p.m., Justin tapped his glass. My heart stopped. Was he about to propose? Had he figured it out somehow? He made a sweet speech about how lucky he felt to have me in his life. Then he handed me the box. I opened it, expecting a ring. What I got instead was a note that felt like a punch to the chest. "I'm leaving you. You're useless. I deserve better." I looked up, confused. His whole expression had changed. Cold, smug. Then, in front of everyone, he said we were over. That he'd outgrown me. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. And walked out. The room froze. No one knew what to say. A few still thought it was a joke, waiting for someone to yell, "Just kidding!" But nobody did. Barbara came over, took the note from my hand, read it, and whispered that he was the worst kind of person. Then came the questions, the shocked faces, the awkward glances. And me? I just smiled. Not because I wasn't hurt. I was crushed. Not because I wasn't embarrassed. I absolutely was. But because in that moment, I realized he had no idea who he was walking away from. He thought he'd planned it perfectly, that by walking out at my birthday party with that smug little note, he held all the power. That this would be his dramatic mic drop, the ending he wrote. What he didn't realize was, he only set the stage for my beginning. Because here's what Justin didn't know. I was pregnant. And 2 weeks before that party, I had already found his hidden credit card statements while looking for a stamp in his desk. I'd already seen the messages on his Apple Watch while he was in the shower. No password, no second layer of security. A rookie mistake. But the biggest thing he didn't know? I don't crumble when things fall apart. I calculate, I adapt. So I smiled, I thanked everyone for coming, I told them I was fine, even though I absolutely wasn't. Then I cut the cake Barbara had brought and passed it out like we were celebrating something, not grieving what he'd just destroyed. Maria left right after. Said she felt sick. Suspicious timing, don't you think? Hold that thought. We're not done with her. The rest stayed behind, helping me clean up, offering me a place to crash, shoulders to lean on, even a few creative suggestions for revenge. Mostly jokes, probably. By midnight, the place was empty except for Barbara, who refused to leave. She camped on my couch and waited until we were alone to let me fall apart. And I did. The tears, the heartbreak, the betrayal, it all came crashing in. Barbara didn't try to fix it. She just listened. Around 2 a.m., I told her I was pregnant. She didn't look surprised, said she'd suspected something. Then I showed her the receipts. Hotel stays, pricey dinners, jewelry I never saw. And the screenshots of messages to someone saved as M filled with heart emojis and late-night plans when I was working. We both knew exactly who M was, especially after Maria's dramatic early exit from the party. We stayed up till dawn talking, planning. Barbara asked if I was going to tell Justin about the baby. I said yes, but not yet. Not until I was ready. As for his affair and the secret spending, I wasn't going to stoop to public scenes or petty drama. I would make sure the truth came out, all of it, in the right way, at the right time. Barbara looked at me and said I was kind of terrifying when I got that mission mode look in my eyes. I actually laughed, like really laughed, for the first time since he walked out. And that night, lying in bed alone for the first time in years, one hand resting on my stomach, I made two promises. One to the baby, that they'd grow up safe, loved, and never questioning their worth. And one to myself, that I would rise from this stronger than I'd ever been. Justin thought that note was the final chapter. But I've listened to enough true crime and survival stories while folding laundry to know the ones who win aren't loud. They're smart, they're patient, and they plan carefully. And trust me, I had plenty of all three. In the next part, I'll tell you how things unraveled for him. How I confirmed exactly who he ran off with. Spoiler, not a shock. And how his picture-perfect exit didn't turn out the way he thought it would. Because sometimes karma doesn't knock. It shows up at 2 a.m., barefoot in the rain, yelling your name. And that's exactly what happened next. I stared at that message for a solid 5 minutes before replying with just one word. No. No explanation, no suggestion for a better time. Just a clear boundary. Seconds later, my phone rang. It was him. I declined the call without hesitation and dialed Barbara instead. She didn't waste a second. By 6:30, my apartment was filled with a circle of friends. Aaron, Sergio, Lana, who extended her trip, and a few others, surrounding me like a human shield. Justin showed up right at 7. The look on his face when he saw everyone there? Absolutely priceless. He tried to play it cool, demanding to know what was happening, but Aaron, who's built like a linebacker, simply handed him a suitcase with a few essentials. Aaron let him know that the rest of his things would be made available once Justin could act like a decent human being. Until then, that suitcase was all he was getting. Justin looked past everyone, trying to meet my eyes from across the room. I was on the couch, calm, composed, and deliberately unbothered. He started to say something about how this was all ridiculous and how I should just let him grab his stuff. That's when I finally spoke up. I told him he should consider himself lucky I hadn't already changed the locks. That we could talk about the rest of his belongings after I had time to process the gift he left me on my birthday. He opened his mouth to argue, but something in my expression must have stopped him. He picked up the suitcase, muttered something about me always needing an audience, the irony, right? And left. Once he was gone, I cried. Not for him. For the life I thought we were building. For the version of the future that no longer existed. For the child I was carrying, who deserved far better than a man who could be so cold. The next morning, I called a locksmith and had the locks changed. Now about Maria. I had my suspicions the moment she slipped out of the party claiming to feel sick. But I needed confirmation. It came from a surprising source. Sergio texted me a couple days later to say that he and Aaron had seen Justin and Maria together, more than once, about 2 months earlier. At the time, they weren't sure what they were seeing, and didn't want to stir things up unnecessarily. He apologized for not telling me sooner. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach and validated all at once. I'd known Justin was cheating. I just hadn't known who with. Learning it was Maria, someone who'd been in my home, laughed at my table, accepted my kindness, hit differently. But I didn't confront them. Not yet. I waited. I observed. I listened. Call it strategy, or maybe I've just listened to too many true crime episodes while folding laundry, but I knew patience would serve me better than drama. In the meantime, I got my life in order. I confirmed the pregnancy, 10 weeks along. I spoke with a lawyer about the lease, our shared assets. Thankfully, we weren't married, so no legal drama there. I froze our joint card, opened a new account in my name. The basics. Smart moves, not emotional ones. And no, I still didn't tell anyone except Barbara about the pregnancy. Not because I was in denial, because I needed to be ready, because I wanted to protect what mattered before letting the world in. 2 weeks after that mess of a birthday, Justin texted again. Said he wanted to talk. Said he needed to get more of his stuff. I agreed. On my terms. A coffee shop nearby, public place, daylight. He looked awful. Tired, unshaven, shirt wrinkled. And yes, I'll admit it, it felt good. He launched into this half-hearted monologue about how he'd felt stuck, how a clean break seemed like the kindest option. I let him go on. Then I asked one simple question. Is Maria making you happy? His face? A full deer-in-the-headlights moment. He stammered through denials so thin they were almost funny. I cut him off, told him I knew about the hotel stays, the secret credit card, the jewelry he bought with money we were supposed to be saving for rent. I asked him to be honest. Just once. And he deflated right there in front of me. He tried the classic "it's not what you think" line. I didn't let him finish. I told him he could pick up the rest of his things Saturday at 2 p.m. Aaron would be there. After that, I didn't want to hear from him unless it was through my lawyer. The moment I said lawyer, his voice actually cracked. He insisted we didn't need legal help, that we could work this out ourselves. I stayed calm even as my heart pounded. I reminded him he had made this choice, loudly, in public, and I was just honoring it. As I stood to leave, he reached for my wrist, not hard, just desperate. He asked about the apartment. Specifically, how I planned to afford it on my own since my job barely covered half the rent. And that's when it all clicked. This wasn't about closure, or even his stuff. It was about money. What Justin had conveniently forgotten, or hoped I had, is that I'd been covering more than half the rent for the past year. His job wasn't as stable as he claimed. He'd been living off me while playing the part of the provider in front of his friends. And Maria. I smiled, calm, kind, deadly, and told him, I'll manage. Unlike you, I plan ahead. Some people budget, some people plan. Me? I save money instead of blowing it on hotel rooms and gifts for side chicks. The moment I said that, the color drained from his face. He realized I knew everything. I left that coffee shop lighter than I'd felt in weeks. Not because I won. This wasn't a game. It was the clarity. Finally seeing Justin for who he really was. A man obsessed with looking successful, not being honest. A man who lied, who bailed the second I no longer fit the image he wanted to present. The mask was off and the truth wasn't pretty. That Saturday, just like we arranged, Aaron supervised as Justin came by for the rest of his things. I wasn't there. I'd signed up for a prenatal yoga class instead. If you're pregnant and stressed, I highly recommend it. When I got home later, the apartment was noticeably emptier. But it felt like mine for the first time in a long time. That night, I rearranged the furniture. Not just to redecorate. This was a reclaiming. Over the next few weeks, I found my rhythm again. Doctor visits, work, vitamins, careful budgeting. It wasn't the life I had imagined, but it wasn't worse, just different. And for the first time in months, I felt like I was actually moving forward. As for Justin and Maria, let's just say the honeymoon didn't last. Sergio, via his cousin who works at a restaurant they frequent, told me they've been arguing, loudly and often. Apparently, Maria wasn't thrilled to discover her catch wasn't quite as financially secure as he claimed. Shocking, I know. Word was she'd started noticing the cracks. The first real sign of trouble came about a month after that coffee shop meeting. I was at the grocery store comparing prices on prenatal vitamins when our carts literally collided. Maria. Her reaction said it all. Startled, then guilty, then guarded. She greeted me with an awkward, "You look good." I told her she looked tired. Because she did. She had the same worn-out expression Justin had at our last meeting. We stood there in silence until she suddenly blurted that Justin told her we were already separated when they started seeing each other. That we were just roommates until the lease ended. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She stumbled through what might have been an apology, or maybe just damage control, saying she wouldn't have gotten involved if she'd known. I told her it didn't matter now. That she had him. I wished her luck and turned to leave. She called after me, saying he wasn't what she thought. That he promised her things he couldn't deliver. I looked back, not with anger, just clarity. I told her that sounded like her problem, not mine, and walked away. 6 weeks post-party, my little baby bump had started to show. Subtle, but there. I decided it was time to stop hiding. I told my boss first, who was amazing, by the way, offering adjusted hours and support once I hit the 3rd trimester. I slowly began telling close friends and family. I knew word would eventually reach Justin, but I no longer cared. I wasn't hiding anymore. At 17 weeks along, 7 weeks after everything fell apart, The messages started. Is it true? Are you pregnant? Why didn't you tell me? We need to talk, immediately. Answer your phone, Lily. This involves me, too. I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't know what to say. I needed time to process what this phase would mean. What kind of role, if any, I wanted him to play. Then came the next message. I have rights. You can't keep my child from me. Call me back, or I'm coming over. That's when I finally answered. I told him not to show up uninvited again, that if he did, I would call the police, and that I'd reach out when I was ready to talk, civilly. He respected that for exactly 2 days. It was a little after 11 p.m. I was in bed reading a pregnancy book and jotting down notes when I heard it, a car door slam, then footsteps, then pounding on my door, not knocking, pounding, and Justin's voice unmistakably slurred. Lily, open up. I know you're in there. We need to talk about our baby. I froze. For a moment, I didn't know what to do. Call Aaron? Call the police? Pretend I wasn't home? But then I heard something else. Crying. Justin was outside, drunk and sobbing. His voice cracked between demands and pleas. He kept repeating that he'd made a mistake, that it was his baby too, that I needed to let him in. And here's the strange part. I didn't feel sorry for him, but I did recognize the look of a man who had just hit reality head on. His big escape plan, his upgrade, his dramatic exit. All of it was unraveling. And now he was face to face with the truth. There was no fresh start, no better version of the life he abandoned, just consequences. I got up, put on my robe, and went to the door. I didn't open it. I spoke through it. Calm, steady. You're drunk? Go home. We can talk tomorrow. If you're sober. He shouted something back, but I was already walking away. Through the closed door, I told him the truth. Yes, I was pregnant. 18 weeks, and yes, it was his. But this wasn't the time or place to have that conversation. He needed to go home. There was a quiet thud against the door. Maybe his forehead, maybe his fist. I couldn't tell. Then, barely above a whisper, he said Maria had left him, told him he wasn't who she thought, that he'd lied about everything. I couldn't help myself. I said that sounded awfully familiar. He let out a dry, hollow laugh. No humor in it, just emptiness. He admitted he'd messed up badly and begged me to let him in. Said he just wanted to talk. One hand on my small but growing bump, I took a slow breath and told him no, not tonight. But I would meet him the next morning. 10 a.m., cafe on Main Street. Public place. My terms. I made it crystal clear. If he showed up late or drunk again, there would be no second chance. He was silent for a long moment, then softly said, Tomorrow, 10 a.m., I'll be there. I heard him walk away, his footsteps uneven, but then the sound of a car starting. Not his. At least he'd called a ride, a small sign of responsibility. Back in bed, my phone lit up with a message from him. I'm sorry. For everything. The party. The note. Tonight. I want to make it right. I didn't reply. Words were easy. Justin had always been good with words. But now I needed actions. Especially with a child on the way. Did I still love him? No. That part died the night he humiliated me in front of everyone I cared about. Did I hate him? Not anymore. Hate takes energy, and I needed mine for something far more important. I would meet him. I would listen. I would set boundaries. But this time, my choices would be based on what was right for me. And for my baby. Not for him. Second update. Hey Reddit. Sorry it took a bit. Life's been eventful. So where were we? Right. Justin had just shown up at my apartment drunk and crying after finding out about the baby. I told him to meet me the next morning. And to my surprise, he did. At exactly 9:55 a.m., there he was, waiting at a table outside the cafe, looking like he hadn't slept. Same clothes, bloodshot eyes, that nervous energy where someone's leg bounces non-stop. He had that, and the entire table was shaking because of it. First thing I noticed, he'd ordered a decaf latte for me, which, thoughtful, sure, except I'd switched to herbal tea weeks ago because caffeine makes me nauseous now. It was such a small thing, but also so telling. That's Justin in a nutshell, always guessing what I need without actually knowing. He started talking right away, a stream of apologies. For the birthday, the cheating, the money, showing up drunk. It was like watching someone trying to patch a sinking ship by shouting, "Sorry," at the water. I just sipped my tea and listened. And there's something surprisingly powerful about not responding right away. About letting someone sit in the silence of their own decisions. Once he ran out of breath, I asked him the one question that mattered. "What exactly do you want?" He froze. Like he hadn't expected me to cut to the point. Then he started rambling again. Something about wanting to be involved, do the right thing. And maybe, just maybe, we could try again. I laughed. Not to be cruel, it was just so out of touch. Try again? After everything? That's when I shifted gears, laid out how this would go. I told him I'd already spoken to a lawyer about custody and child support. His reaction to the word lawyer was almost comical, like a guy realizing the water's deeper than he thought and suddenly he can't swim. I told him I wasn't trying to keep him away from his child. But that trust would have to be rebuilt from scratch. That meant showing up consistently, not just when it looked good on social media. That meant financial support, emotional presence, and real accountability. He kept trying to shift the conversation back to us. I kept bringing it back to co-parenting. Eventually, he got frustrated, said I was being cold, too calculated. I looked him in the eye and said, "Cold and calculated is what you did to me on my birthday. I'm doing this now to protect our child. That's the difference." He didn't have a comeback for that. Before I left, I handed him a folder. Ultrasound images, due date, doctor info, and a draft agreement my lawyer had prepared. I told him to read it, talk to his own lawyer if needed, and let me know what he wanted to do when he was ready to speak like an adult. As I stood, he reached for my wrist again. "Seriously? What is it with the wrist grabbing?" He asked if Maria knew about the baby. I told him that wasn't my story to share, and I hadn't gone out of my way to tell her. Then, gently but firmly, I moved his hand away and walked out. The crib was from IKEA. Classic, affordable, and, as Barbara and I discovered, an absolute puzzle. It took us 3 hours and multiple snack breaks to put it together. Honestly, those instructions should come with a translator. The changing table came from a second-hand shop, and my mom sent me this adorable mobile with little stars that spin softly when the fan's on. I'd been setting money aside bit by bit, picking up freelance work on weekends, editing social media content. Nothing flashy, but it helped cover the gap that Justin's absence had left. My mom also sent some financial help. It was kind and much appreciated, though a little uncomfortable. I've always prided myself on being self-sufficient. Still, I knew when to say thank you. Meanwhile, Justin was slowly reappearing. He'd text from time to time asking about the baby, sometimes requesting photos of how the nursery was coming along. I'd reply with short, factual updates. No warmth, no personal conversation. Occasionally, he'd try to veer into old territory, asking if I was seeing anyone, or mentioning shows we used to watch together. I always brought it back to the baby. Then came what I now call the incident. And yes, it deserves capital letters. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was at Target stocking up on diapers, because apparently there's no such thing as too many. That's when I bumped carts with Maria. Again. Only this time, her energy was completely different. No awkwardness, no defensiveness. If anything, she looked relieved to see me. She asked how I was feeling, how the pregnancy was going, and she seemed sincere. Then she surprised me. She apologized. Not the rushed, "sorry you feel that way" kind of apology, but a real one. She admitted that she'd believed Justin's version of things, that we were basically over, just sharing a lease until the end of the contract. She said she wouldn't have gotten involved if she'd known the truth. Apparently, he'd told her the same story he'd told others, that I was holding him back from his potential, that he needed to break free to become who he was meant to be. Classic. She also revealed something I didn't expect. He'd been seeing another woman while dating her. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. We ended up grabbing drinks, tea for me, of course, and had what I can only describe as a strangely therapeutic conversation. We weren't bonding over pain as much as aligning on truth. Justin wasn't a monster, just a man deeply insecure, constantly chasing validation, and willing to lie to get it. As we said goodbye, she mentioned, almost casually, that Justin had lost his job 2 weeks earlier. She figured I should know, since it could affect child support. I thanked her for the info and headed home, quietly processing what that might mean. Later that evening, I was folding baby clothes, tiny onesies that still looked too small to be real, when the doorbell rang. I checked the peephole. Always check the peephole. It was Justin, sober this time, but visibly struggling. I opened the door but didn't let him in. He launched straight into it. He asked if I'd heard about his job loss, claimed it wasn't his fault, said he was being targeted. Then he asked if I'd seen Maria. I told him yes. We ran into each other at Target. His face tried to look casual, but he couldn't quite pull it off. He asked what we talked about. I answered honestly, mostly you. That didn't go over well. He got agitated, accused us of turning against him, said everyone was making him out to be the villain when he was just trying to do his best. I reminded him calmly that this entire situation was the result of his decisions and no one else's. Playing the victim wouldn't help him here. And then he just crumbled. No dramatic tears, just a quiet collapse into reality. He said his life was unraveling. No job, no girlfriend, an apartment he could barely afford, and now a child he didn't feel ready for. For a second, something in me stirred, that old reflex to comfort him. But then I remembered the words from that birthday letter. You're useless. I deserve better. Instead of comfort, I offered something more useful. Clarity. I told him he had two options: keep spiraling and lose everything, or step up and rebuild. Slowly, responsibly. For his child, not for me. And for the first time in all of this, he actually listened. No deflection, no justifications, just silence and a slow, quiet nod. Then he asked if we could talk inside. I hesitated, then agreed, but left the door open. You never fully close a door behind you when someone's emotionally unstable. It's just a rule. We sat at the kitchen table, and this time he asked real questions about the baby, health, due date, delivery plan. For the first time, it wasn't surface-level curiosity, it was engagement. And somewhere in the middle of that conversation, I realized something important. I no longer had feelings for Justin, but I did want him to be okay. Not for his sake, for our child's. Before he left, he promised to take the child support agreement seriously and look for work immediately. He also thanked me for not hating him, for giving him a chance. I told him hate was a luxury I couldn't afford. I had better things to spend my energy on now, and in the weeks that followed, something shifted. He found a new job, less money, but stable. He signed the agreement with no resistance. And, this shocked me, he enrolled in a parenting class at the local community center. As my due date approaches, things aren't perfect. But they're no longer falling apart. They're finally starting to take shape. Not perfect, but it works. Justin and I have built a cautious co-parenting relationship, one based on structure and clear expectations. He joins for doctor appointments, when invited. He even helped assemble the crib after I finally admitted defeat with the IKEA instructions. Honestly, it was either accept his help or declare war on a bag of wooden dowels. Then just last week, 7 months into my pregnancy, I received a package from him. Inside was a simple journal, not expensive, just clean, practical. Tucked inside was a short note. For your thoughts, your plans, and all those true crime podcast theories you like to write down. You were never useless. I was just too self-absorbed to see your value. I didn't reply. Some things don't require a response. But I did start using the journal, mostly to record this experience, so one day I can share with our child the real, messy, deeply human story of how they came to be. Next time, I'll tell you about the birth. About what happened when the idea of fatherhood became reality. Because if there's one thing this entire journey has taught me, it's this. People don't always surprise you with kindness. Sometimes they surprise you with growth. And either way, they remind you of their humanity. Final update. Hey Reddit fam, it's been a while. If you're still following, thank you. And if you forgot I existed, totally understandable. Newborn life is beautiful chaos, and free time is basically a myth. But yes, she's here. Zoe arrived 6 weeks ago, weighing in at 7 pounds 4 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and, believe it or not, Justin's chin. Honestly, that's the only feature of his I'm not mad about her inheriting. Labor was intense. All those calm, cinematic birth vlogs I watched on YouTube? Lies. Every single one. Mine lasted 32 hours. Yes, 32. And somewhere during hour 17, as I was clinging to Barbara's hand and yelling things I won't repeat, I had this weird moment of clarity. I thought back to that birthday party, to the breakup note in a gift box, to the shock and pain. And I realized I wasn't that woman anymore. I was stronger now. Exhausted? Absolutely. But also fully in control of the life I was bringing into the world. Justin showed up at the hospital, which shocked everyone, including me. He came with this giant teddy bear that couldn't even fit through the hospital room door. Bless his heart. He stayed, awkward and quiet, pacing and scrolling his phone, occasionally asking if I needed anything. It wasn't graceful, but he was there. Barbara, of course, was my anchor. When the contractions got too much and I swore I couldn't do it anymore, she reminded me that I already was doing it. And when Zoe was placed on my chest, I felt a stillness I hadn't known in months. All the pain, all the detours, every step had led to her. And I wouldn't rewrite a single one. Justin cried when he held her. Not the movie-style, pretty tears. More like red-nosed, blotchy-faced kind of crying. The kind you don't plan. It was the most real I'd ever seen him. The first few weeks at home were a blur. Sleep was a theory. Diaper changes became muscle memory. Feeding was trial, error, and tears. My mom stayed with us for 2 weeks, which helped, and also tested my patience. She kept reorganizing my kitchen and insisting that colanders should not be stored with pots. I love her, but chaos clearly runs in the family. Justin surprisingly showed up. Not to live with us, but for consistent visits, 3 times a week. Sometimes he brought diapers or takeout, sometimes impractical but cute baby outfits, like a tiny faux leather jacket for a 6-week-old. I didn't have the heart to tell him she'd outgrow it before the weather even turned cold. We still have our moments. He's late sometimes, cancels occasionally with vague work excuses. But he also shows signs of paying attention. When I mentioned struggling with a clogged duct, he actually showed up, with cabbage leaves and a heating pad. If you know, you know. Financially, things have found a rhythm. Justin pays child support on time. I'm working part-time from home doing social media management. It's not glamorous, but the bills are paid. And my landlord let me renew the lease in my name. Small win, big relief. The apartment feels new now. His things are gone, replaced with baby gear that somehow takes up double the space. I repainted the living room a soft sage green that instantly lifts my mood. Funny how much your environment affects your spirit. I still run into Maria sometimes. Small city. It's less awkward now, more like seeing an old coworker. Last time she was with a guy who called her babe in every sentence. She looked happy, maybe a little forced, but I genuinely hope she's okay. As for Justin, he's still figuring things out. Barbara says his job is stressful and not what he expected. But here's the truth. We're all still figuring things out. Me, him, Maria, you, everyone. What matters is that Zoe is loved, safe, growing, and for the first time in a long time, so am I. According to Aaron, who heard it from someone he plays basketball with who works with Justin, turns out small-town gossip is faster than Wi-Fi. Justin's living in a cramped studio apartment now. He complains about it constantly, and sometimes when he stops by to see Zoe, I catch him glancing around my place. There's a look on his face I can't quite read, something between nostalgia and regret. The strangest part? He seems to be evolving. I know. It surprises me too. He mentioned he's been going to therapy. This is the same guy who once said therapy was just paying someone to listen to you complain. He's been reading parenting books, joined a dad group online. Sometimes I joke that aliens swapped him out for a look-alike who actually takes accountability. Meanwhile, my life has taken a few unexpected turns too. Remember that part-time remote job? It came through a referral from Sergio. His sister's company needed help, and now I work with a team of genuinely kind people doing interesting projects. All while Zoe naps. On days when she decides to nap, that is. And then, there's Eli. Yes, there's an Eli now. He was the delivery guy during those first wild postpartum weeks. At first, I barely noticed him. Just a polite, thank you, and a request to leave the bags by the door. New mom survival mode. But then, he started adding notes to my orders. Helpful suggestions from other parents, little jokes, even the occasional pun that made me laugh out loud when I needed it most. One particularly rough afternoon, he offered to carry the cases of water inside. I hesitated. Stranger, apartment, but something about him felt safe. While he helped put away groceries, we talked. He's finishing a degree in environmental science and delivers to pay the bills. Helps out with his sister's kids too, which explained why my mess didn't scare him off. We exchanged numbers, in case there were any delivery issues. We both knew that was code for let's keep talking. And we have. We text. He's dropped by for coffee. It's nothing serious yet. I'm not rushing. But it's refreshing to talk to someone who doesn't want to discuss diaper brands or nap schedules. Last week, when Justin came over for his visit, Eli was just leaving. Justin's face said everything. Confused. Maybe a little unsettled. Later, he casually asked who that guy was. I kept it vague. Because honestly, there isn't much to tell yet. And even if there were, it's not really his business anymore. He made a few comments about moving on fast, then seemed to realize how that sounded and backed off. Barbara, of course, thinks I should go for it. But I'm in no rush. After everything, I've learned that healing takes time, and that Zoe is my priority. Dating as a single parent is a whole new world, and I'm still learning the rules. Speaking of Barbara, she's been my anchor. When I feel overwhelmed or like I'm getting it all wrong, she shows up with iced coffee, finally back in my life now that breastfeeding is easier, and reassures me that all new parents feel this way. Sometimes she takes Zoe for a few hours so I can nap, shower, or just stare at the wall in silence. That kind of support? Priceless. Yesterday was my birthday. 1 year since that birthday. The night everything changed. But instead of reliving it, I hosted a small gathering. Barbara, her husband Aaron, Sergio, my cousin Lana, a few close friends. Justin stopped by briefly to drop off a gift. A bracelet with Zoe's birthstone. Thoughtful, surprisingly. He didn't stay. As I looked around my apartment, small, full of baby gear, and somehow filled with love, I felt something I didn't expect. Gratitude. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe Eli becomes something meaningful, or maybe he's just a kind chapter in a longer story. Maybe Justin continues growing into a good co-parent, or maybe he doesn't. Maybe I stay in this apartment. Maybe one day there'll be a backyard where Zoe can run barefoot under the trees. What I do know is this. I'm not the same woman who stood in shock holding a note in a gift box a year ago. That woman was broken, but determined. This woman, me now, is rebuilt. Stronger at the fractured edges. So if there's any takeaway from this long, messy journey, maybe it's this. Sometimes the worst moment of your life becomes the first step toward the best version of you. Not right away. Not painlessly. But eventually. Oh, and in case you're wondering what happened to that giant teddy bear Justin brought to the hospital, it now lives on Zoe's bed and doubles as a barricade when I need 2 seconds to run to the bathroom. So yeah, it found its purpose after all. And the infamous breakup note? I kept it. It's tucked away in a memory box with Zoe's hospital bracelet, her first lock of hair, and the test that changed everything. Someday, when she's older, we'll tell her the full story. Not to weigh her down, but because it's part of how she came into this world, and every part of her story matters.